Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our part 4 of our GreyTech PowerPack Summer School webinars. Just before we start, I'm going to send out a pulse check just to make sure that you guys can hear me okay and you can see the opening slides. If you could just give me a thumbs up on the pulse check, that would be great. Okay, excellent. Got a few thumbs up there. That's good. Okay. So, for those of you that have been with us, this is the first batch of webinars that we're doing with this new interface. So I'll just highlight a couple of things. You should all be looking at the slide area. So we're going to start with a few slides to begin with. If you do have any questions at any point, you can type them into the Q&A section. And then when we get to the live demonstration, that's going to show in the media player. Now it should start playing automatically for everyone. So we'll just focus on the slide area to begin with. Okay. So a little bit about me. My name is Rob Merriman. I am one of the technical specialists here at GreyTech. You've all probably seen this slide to death now. So I've got 14 years experience in the construction industry. I was a steelwork and metalwork detailer using advanced steel. During that time, I worked in 2 subcontract drawing offices, and now I am a structures technical specialist for GreyTech in the UK, doing anything to do with structural CAD packages. So this series of webinars, we are looking at all different parts of advanced steel modeling, and because it is nearly back to school time, here in the UK, we decided that we would go and create a whole model of a school building. And the focus of the 4 webinars has been on the tools that you can get within the PowerPack. So part 1 was looking at the grids and the actual structure with the structure designer. Part 2 is looking at how we added the joints to the structure. Part 3 was with me a couple of days ago. That was looking at the stair tools. And today we are here to look at the railing tools. So for our railing tools, we will look at what options are included with the PowerPack Premium railings, what setting out points and inputs do we need to use, and then I will do a demonstration on the tools and how the different bits and pieces of the dialogues work. During that demonstration, we'll look at the macro options and all the different settings that we have in there. So what is included? So we've got 5 railing macros. We've got our standard railing. Now that will do sort of fabricated balustrade. It will also do infill panels as well. We've got key clamp macro, all post macros, a double post where you've got the horizontal rails welded to posts. And then finally, we've got the wall-mounted one. Now, just because of the length of time available today, I'm not going to show every single one. We're not going to do the double post or the wall-mounted, but everything is a variation on a theme with these macros. So what options do we have within the macros? So we now do have the option to split the top rail and the middle rail. So this allows us to do a whole run of balustrade without actually having to delete the macro box and then start splitting things and adding extra bits. We can actually now do that within the macro itself. We've got equal baluster spacings. So where you want a maximum gap of 100 mil on all your balusters, the system will now space those out equally. We've got infill panels, which I just talked about, so we can do those out of plates or gratings. We can now do fixing lugs. So again, if we're splitting panels and we need to actually put some fixing lugs in there, we can do that inside the macro. We can do swan necks for where you go from a sloping to horizontal rail detail and you need to put a swan neck in there. If you've got panels in there, we can actually put edging profiles around it. So if we're fabricating panels, we can do that again within the macros. And then finally, we have a special part manager. So when I get to show the key clamp and the ball post, we don't have every supplier from every country around the world. It would just be impossible for us to keep on top of and manage that. And the same with the ball post. We've put some examples in. But we have the special part manager, so that allows you, the users, to actually go in and add the items that you're buying from your particular suppliers. Now, the setting out points and inputs, the railing macro, the PowerPack railing macros, we can use beams, lines, or points as an input. So with the out-of-the-box macros, they always have to have a beam element. So you either have to draw in dummy beams or put in concrete beams. With the PowerPack macros, you don't need to do that. You can actually draw AutoCAD lines and convert them into railings, or you can just click around the model with nothing in there for your inputs. And when you connect to things, you can connect to beams, you can connect to plates, you can connect to gratings, or you can actually just ignore the option. So say we are bolting down or anchoring key clamp to a concrete slab, we can just ignore the item to connect to, and then we can choose within the macro to put anchors in as well. And one of the key things that we can do in here with the PowerPack railing macros is we can actually tell the system where we want our post positions. So the out-of-the-box macro and the PowerPack macro, depending on what option you use, works on standard centers. So I want my posts at maximum 1 meter centers. With the PowerPack macro, you actually get the option at the beginning to click where you actually want the post. So if you're doing railings going up a concrete staircase and you want your posts on particular treads and they're not equal, you can literally click where you want your posts. So let's actually go and have a look at all these railing tools. This has been pre-recorded. It's going to pop up in your media player. So if anyone does have any questions while this is playing, I am going to be sat here and I will answer any questions that pop up as we're going through the demonstration. And I will obviously take questions at the end as well. So the video should start playing automatically in your media player on your interface. Okay, so let's actually look at these railing macros in action. So the railing macros are accessed via the PowerPack tab on the ribbon, and we have a button here called the PowerPack Stairs and Railings Vault. Now what that will do, that will open up a palette. So we looked at this on Tuesday when I was doing the staircases. And in here we have a tab for railings. Now what we'll do, it's quite a big building, there's quite a lot going on in here. I'm just going to set my UCS to world. I've got a couple of model views set up. So I'm going to go to the Project Explorer, and we've got our one for the staircase. So we'll start with our staircase. Now what we're going to put in here, I didn't move it to the right place, that's fine. We are going to use the standard railing macro. Now that macro, as we talked about in the PowerPoint presentation, the Graytec PowerPack railing macros, you can see my input types here. I do have beams to mimic the standard macro, but if we don't have beams, we don't now need to model in dummy beams. What we can do is we can work off points or we can work off lines. So my staircase here, if you were with me on Tuesday for the stair tools, this has been created with plate stringers. So what I can do here, I don't have a beam because it's obviously a plate. I can use my input type as points. So we can say, right, first point is here, second point, third point, try and get these right first time. Fourth point, we will come all the way over the top. Excuse my bad modeling. Now, I can choose what I want to connect to. So I can say, well, we are connecting in those instances to these plates. Do I want to provide post base points? So we talked about this again. You can actually click where you want your posts to go. For now, I will say no. We'll look at that a little bit later. Do I want to select a nosing point? So if your stringer is very far offset from the nosing line, we can actually provide a nosing point. Again, I'll just say for today's example, no. And there is my railing. Let's put this over here so everyone can see it. So that's our railing working round. We will go through some of the sort of basics within the macro here. It is fairly self-explanatory. So for my posts, we're going to say today we want square hollow sections. So a UK square hollow section. We will say that we are going to go to the all section, and we are going to say that they are 50 by 3. And then for my positioning, now I want these bolted to the side. So in here we got top, left, or right. So I went in clockwise direction. So let's see. I want those to the left. You see them just nudge to the left. Now, at the moment, my post distribution here is by segment. So for every segment, this is segment number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5, and number 6. You can see I've got 6 segments. It's using the start and end distance for all of them. What I'll do here is I'll change it to by total length. So now my posts start at the bottom, end at the top, and then they are equally distributed along the length. We'll leave them here. I do have my post numbers, which I can offset. Then we'll look at our handrail. So my top handrail. Now let's say in this scenario, I want to change my top rail to for the UK build, half round square edge. Now, when you install a PowerPack, we have added user sections called half round square edge via the PowerPack. I have had to go in and add something to a couple of databases. I will put in the presentation towards the end. I'll put in a link here. But if we have a look, I now have my half round square edge. I do need to rotate it in here. We've then got our rail height on the straight, and we have our rail height on the slope. So I'm going to change this in here. I'm going to set this to 900 on the slope. And that obviously changes my intersection points. Now we'll come back to the split in a minute. We'll get this roughly how we want it. Now my middle handrail, I want some flat bars in here. I want some what I would call running rails, some flat bar running rails. So what I'm going to do, the first thing I'm going to say is I'm going to say I want these set out from the top vertical. My distance on the straight is going to be 100, and my distance on the slopes is also going to be 100. And I'm going to say in here, now that I've set those, it's not critical, I want 2 middle rails. And then on the straight, I want those set at 900. On the slope, that's going to be about 700. There we go. So now our middle rails are how we want them. And go to the properties. And if you join me on Tuesday for the stair tools, we talked about the tree structure that we have within the macro. I have a tree structure in here. So for our middle rails, I can have different sections if I want. The system knows that there are 2 rails in there and that we can have 2 different middle rails. Now I don't want 2 different ones in here. So we're just going to set these 2 flat bars and make sure that they are rotated the correct way. They are. So we will make these 40 by 10. So there's all our flat bars. Then I want some infill bars. So we are going to go to the infill. We're going to change the type to pickets. And then we're going to go into the properties. Now I want square bar infills in here. So we're going to go to UK square. And we'll make them 12 by 12. Now, one of the issues that you might encounter with the out-of-the-box railing macro is the spacings, where you have to set the spacing from the center of the post to the center of the first infill bar, center of this post to the center of this one, and then the centers, so you can't get your equal centers everywhere. With the PowerPack railing tools, we have added in a identical spacing calculation method. So if I say the maximum distance is 100 millimeters, that is, if you have a look at the picture in here, 100 millimeters from the inside face of the post to the inside face of the bar, and that is the same everywhere. So just to have a look at that, because I know this is important for people who do a lot of railings. I'm just going to change my UCS, and just to show you, I'm just going to turn on my endpoint. So we'll do a couple of distances. So from this endpoint here to this endpoint here, the horizontal distance, the distance in the X, is 71.26. The distance between here and here is 71.26, and the distance back here in the X is 71.26. So they are identical spacings for each of, or for the infills. Just go back into the macro. Okay, so you know that is pretty standard. We do want the post connection. I do want a plate bolting it to the stringer. As with the stair macros, choose the option and then give the system a couple of seconds. Let's not get click happy. We want to give the system time to put on what we want in here. Now we do have the tree structure in here. So what we can say is we want a 50mm post, we want a 150 wide plate, 60 high will do, that's fine. Not taking my own advice here, I'm getting click happy. So I want my bolts to be, let's just for now, we should go and choose countersunk, that's probably what we're going to want. So we'll just change it to the new countersunk that's been added via the PowerPack, and we'll make those M12. Again, it's just doing it there, so we'll make those 12. Then we can say the number of rows I want as 1. The distance between the columns, I want those to be 100 mil. We'll know when it's done when we get the .00, and then that puts our countersunks in there. We then want to come and move that plate. So what we want to do is we want to look at DX2, I believe. So let's just say for now we want to drop that down 75 mil. Now I do have quite a lot to show you, so I'm probably not going to get these perfect. Oh, I might have to put it in as minus 75. Oh, there we go. Now that's worked quite well on segments 2, 3 and 4. Probably at the top here, segment 5, but segment 1 and 2 and 5, I need to move that down a bit more. So this is where the tree structure comes in beautifully, because what I can do in the tree structure, I can now click on segment 2 and I can change that to 100. Not segment number 2. Sorry, that should have been segment number 1. So segment number 2, I now need to just set back to 75, but the tree structure just gives me a bit more control to position things on my horizontal and sloping. Segment number 5, I can then say copy from segment 1, because segment number 5 is my second flight on the staircase. So pretty straightforward setup so far. Now some of the things that we can do within the macro in here. We want to look at splitting our rails. Now what we can do with our handrails, obviously at the moment this is all one big piece of balustrade. We're not going to fit that as one piece of balustrade. I'm not going to do the whole thing today, but you'll notice we have this split tab. Now what we can do is we can say, we can choose where the handrail is going to be split. So let's say we want to split it on post number 5. So 1, 2, 3, sorry, can't count today. 1, 2, 3, 4. I can say I want to split based on a post position, so by posts. And then the macro opens up, unlocks for me, and I can say we want to split based on post number 4. And if we have a look, that will put our split in. I've got to go and change the way the posts connect to the top rail. Now we might be putting a little lug in there with a couple of countersunk screws. So we might want to offset this and say, right, so we've got a 50mm post, so that's split in the middle. We want to say that we want to offset that, let's say 27mm, because we're going to put a 2mm gap in between the split. So if I offset it 27mm, should move to the left. There we go, and we want a 2mm gap in there. So there's my split. I should have gone 26. And then I can just continue to work my way around and do that. Like we said, I've got to show you all the railings today, and we're already 15 minutes in, so I'm not going to go much further than that. We do have the option to split the middle handrail as well. The endings in here, at the start and at the end, we've got our ending option, so I can go to the end. Sorry, I need to choose ending type. Then we've got a bent end, we've got an elbow, we've got loop. We've got a couple of new options. Return to wall, so we can return to the side. Or we've got a swan neck, so we can put a swan neck in, and we'll look at swan necks at this position in here shortly. I'm going to look at my handrail connection. I'm going to say I want an aligned cut between my post and handrail, and I don't want a gap because it's just been welded. Now what we can do in here, if we come back to this post in here, I can split my top rail, that's fine. I also then need to put a gap in my middle handrail, and in this sort of scenario I would fix it with a lug. So for my middle handrail to post, what we need to do, I need to set the cut type to aligned, or sorry, the connection type to aligned. And what that allows me to do is that allows me to enable the fixing lug option. So I can say I want horizontal lugs, and now because you have to set the connection type to aligned, that will allow you to enable the lugs. When I choose I want horizontal lugs, again we have the tree structure in here. So I don't want it on all posts, because this type of railing I don't want on all posts. What I can do is I can go to post number 4, and I can say, and again within the tree structure I've got the middle rail in here, I want to create a fixing lug. That's going to put it initially on one side, so I've got a feeling it'll default to the wrong side, so yeah, there we go. So what I can say is I want to go on the other side, but if everything was being bolted up on site, we could obviously do both sides in here. We can then set all the parameters based on the pictures in here, the bolts that we're using, the positioning of the bolts. I want to put in, let's say, a 5mm gap, and that is going to give me a gap between the middle rail and the post. We can then set the bolts, we can then set the distances as well in here. I'm just really conscious already of time. That's obviously putting it top and bottom. And again, with this tree structure, I can then go to any other post that I want to and then copy that information around. The other thing that we can do is I said we'd look at swan neck. So in here, the macro knows all the different corner connections that we have in here. So this is corner number 1, where we go from sloping to horizontal, 2, 3, 4, and then 5. Again, with the tree structure, you can see my welds here are default into site weld. So at the top of the tree structure, so with all the corners selected, I will say I want to make these shop welds. I've clicked it. You can see that the dialog hasn't quite updated itself, so just got to be patient. There we go, it's changed. Corner number 1 though, I've got a tree structure again because I've got my top rail, my middle rail, and I've got middle rail 1 and 2. I can actually come in here and I can either do a mitre, an elbow if we're bending it, but even between here I can put a swan neck in. So let's just have a look at the swan neck option. We can do this on the ends as well. If you do it on the ends, you do have an option to continue that swan neck round to the left or to the right, so you can have a side offset. You can see in here, if I put that swan neck in, I will then get my swan neck here. If we look at the dialog, you do need to know the height for your swan neck, and it has done it on the bottom because I've done it for everything for corner 1. Now, I obviously don't want that at the middle rail. Not sure exactly which one is number 1 or number 2, so I'll drill down the tree structure, click on number 1, and I'll change it back to mitre and see which one changes. It is the bottom one. So that's gone back, and now all my infill bars are cut to that. Now the issue I've got here is that number 2, it's using the same height as the top rail. So I would come out of the macro, check my dimensions, but if I set this to, let's just say 150 for today's example, that's going to pull that swan neck back because the vertical section is only going to be 150 mil long. Probably need to do a little bit more, but you can see in there I now have a mitre at the bottom, a swan neck on the middle rail, a swan neck on the top rail, all welded in the workshop with a split in the top rail and fixing lugs. So yeah, I would need to repeat all of this and copy that information around the macro, but for today's example, hopefully you can see that this macro is so powerful. And what our aim is to get to the point where we're not having to explode macros to do the finishing touches. Like we said in the stair session on Tuesday, the aim is to get to not having to explode at all. Every railing is different, every project is different, so we still can't do 100% of everything, but we can certainly get a lot closer. And just to check this, I can check to see what's attached in the workshop. We can see now that this railing macro, everything is attached up to this point, and because of the splits and the way we've done things, this is where it stops. Just in case anyone is asking, I can't do fixing lugs in this position within the macro. If I'd have kept it as a circular top rail, then we would have like an internal tube-to-tube splice. If you're not aware, and as we're looking at the PowerPack, in the PowerPack connection vault, there is a tube-to-tube connection that will do, obviously, handrail to handrail, but this will work with a special part as well. So if you're buying in your tube clamps, your internal tube clamps, this macro will actually put that in as a special part, and then when you start to run lists and things like that, you would get a quantity of those special parts. So that is our sort of fabricated balustrade. Okay, so that is the initial part of our standard railing. What we're going to do, we are going to turn off our staircase. So we'll turn off the model view. That allows me to see the whole model. Now on this platform here that we covered with the PowerPack platform cover tool, we are going to put some glass railings, because the PowerPack cover tool has automatically put these cutouts in here for me. So we are still going to continue with the standard railing. So we're going to go back to the PowerPack stairs and railings tool palette. I'm going to choose standard railing again, and this time I'm going to choose beams as my input. So there's my beams as an input. Choose a start point of our railing. A bit naughty here, didn't turn my end point back off. So we're going to go from node in there to the node in here. Do I want to provide base points? No. Do I want to select a nose in point again? No. And then we just wait for the macro to do what it needs to do. Now this is the same macro that we did for that infill balustrade, and what we're going to do, we're going to go to the post positioning. I'm again, instead of doing it by segments, because each beam that I clicked on is classed as a segment, I'm going to say no, I would like to do it by total length, and in here my maximum distance is going to be 1200, and hopefully that is now aligning with that. Now what we can do in here is, I don't want a middle rail, so if we want to turn the middle rails off, we come into the macro, we set the value to 0. That'll turn my middle rails off. With the infill, we looked at pickets before, but the PowerPack railing macros, we have the option for panels. Now if we do panels, what the system will do is it will put in special parts as our fixing lugs, and it will create the plates or the glass panels. We can then come in here, we can set all the distances. If we want a frame around it, so for glass panels, no, but maybe we are doing mesh infills. Now, if you're doing mesh infills, we could change it to grating. You're probably thinking, well, why would I do it like that? With the PowerPack, we have added, for the UK, we've added some FH Brundle heavy gauge weld mesh. So again, it will at least list it correctly. You don't see each individual bar because that'll just kill our performance, but the PowerPack does add some grating classes for FH Brundle. Just change it back to plate for now. And then we can come in here. We can choose what special parts we want to use from some that are preloaded, not all and not for every supplier. I will talk very, very quickly about how you can add your own ones in. But that allows me then to do effectively glass balustrade. Now, for either of these types of railings or any railings that we and you are working on, we do have library entries in here. So if I turn my infills back to none, once you've got your balustrade set up how you like it, we can go to the library, save it in the library, but for today I can load my information into the library. Or sorry, load it in from the library. And that'll give me that information in there. And then if you've got split points based on max length or certain things like that, obviously we can set those. And in here, this is a tube, so I could then look at my tube-to-tube connection. Any of the macros that use special parts, whether it's stairs, railings, or ones from the connection vault, we have what we call our special part manager. So if you are using a different supplier, or you need to load in something yourself, we go to the special part manager. And this is where, let's say, glass clamps, go to the glass clamp tab. I could actually add my own producer, or if we come to this one here, I could add a new family. You do need to have the special part, but what we do is we click the new button, we go and choose our special part, we choose whether it's a clamp or a corner clamp. The macro needs to know some of this information beforehand. So I can say it's a clamp, and then we can choose where the system is putting holes, what sections it works on, what thicknesses of glass are available within the macro. So we can do all of this within our special part manager. So we're gonna look at two of the other tools in here. So I've got a couple of model. I don't have to turn my model view off. I can turn a second one on, and I can just work in this area. So I've got our ramp on the outside of the building. Just adjust that model view so you can see anything. We've got a sloping section and we've got a horizontal section. Now what I'm going to do for the sloping section, we're going to do ball post macro. I'm going to choose ball post, and for this time my input is going to be lines, because I've drawn where I want my balustrade to go. Now select objects is asking for beams, plates or gratings, because this is connecting to concrete. I can click the concrete, or if you didn't have any concrete, you don't need concrete. We don't actually have to select anything. We can just do an enter to skip that step. Do I want to provide post base points? No. And then the macro will create our ball post railings. That will put those in for us. Now what this macro is doing, these posts in here are done as special parts. So the macro is actually very clever. It does create a special part from a library, or if we are customizing this, it will create a special part on the fly. So when it comes to it, I cannot get a fabrication drawing for this. This is a bought-in, off-the-shelf item, so a special part. If we look at the posts, at the moment this is working from a catalog. So again, we have some examples. We don't have every supplier and every different post type in here. But if you know the code and it's in this macro, we can then go and choose it from there. If you want to customize it and then your supplier is fabricating them for you, what we do is we would click on the custom option in here, and then we can go and actually, you see all these options here are grayed out. For my post profile, my middle handrail heights, because it's using a catalog entry, I can't go and change anything. If I changed it to custom, then we could go and start to change things. And the same with what's happening at the bottom. If we needed a plate welded to the bottom that our stockist is manufacturing for us, we can create that. We can change the balls. But to do that, we have to go in and click custom, and then the system will allow me to customize everything to do with that. But again, this in here is being created as a special part. Now the number, or the description, sorry, for the special part, it's called ball post. It will tell you the tube sizes it's using, it will tell you the ball centers, and it will tell you the angle. That's all the macro will tell you. If we had to provide some information, because a couple of people have asked me, how do I provide that information to the fabricator? I would need to create a GA drawing. So I need to put a little camera around it like this, and then I would put the dimensions on that GA view. Just because I'm running out of time. The last macro we're going to look at, I'm going to turn my nearest snap on in here. The last macro we're going to look at is the key clamp macro. So for our fittings that we're buying in, so we're going to go key clamp. I'm going to choose my input as lines because I've got a couple of lines in here. Now if I can't get them, I'm going to have to do a little window around it and then deselect. So if I do that again, I select everything. If I want to deselect something, push and hold the shift key and then click on the concrete. That will deselect it. What are we connecting to? Again, I'm not connecting to anything, so I'll ignore that. And then the macro in this example today has been asking me all the time, do I want to provide post base points? So now I'm going to say, I've been saying no, but now I want to say yes. So if I click on yes, what it allows me to do with nearest on, I can choose where the post is being positioned. So I can have a big gap in here. We'll put 3 close to each other. So if you've got points or you know where you want your posts, all of the PowerPack macros allow us to choose a post position. Do I want to select a nosing point? I'm going to say no. And you can now see, okay, because my line started back here, that's why it's starting back here. So we would have to look at changing our start point because I've got a clash. But you can see that my posts are now wherever I want them. Now let's say we've made a mistake. I can't add or remove any posts, but I can change the position of posts that have been created within the macro. So you see if I go to a 2D wireframe, I've got this little sphere in here. I can click this little sphere, and if I drag it this way and I type 800 mil, again I've hit enter, just give the system a bit of time to adjust itself. That post is attached to that sphere. So I can't add or remove posts once I've set them in the dialog, but I can change a position of posts that already exist. We've got the same options. The macros are fairly consistent. We've got the option to split the handrail, set the post positions. What I can do with this key clamp macro though, is if I look at my post connections, I do have the option in here to have a special part fixing at the base. Because if we're fixing to the concrete, we do need to drill into the concrete and fix it with a fitting. Now that is defaulting to bolts. If I go to the connection definition, in here my connector, I can change that to anchors, and that will then allow me to choose an anchor. So, I mean, for today's example, that's absolutely fine. But I now have my special part with anchors. Some of you might say, well, we need those rotating. And you can see in here, I've got a rotation of the special part in the macro already. So we can go and rotate that. You can see I've already clicked on it. It does take a few seconds. So this is where I've set it for the stairs, I'll set it for the railings. These macros are doing quite a lot of work for you. So don't get what I call trigger happy. If the dialog doesn't update itself straight away, it will only take a few seconds. It feels like longer, especially when I'm demonstrating it to you guys. But just be patient with it. Let the macro do what it needs to do. If we start clicking, that's when we can potentially cause crashes that the system wasn't going to crash, but we've actually caused them ourselves. So in a very, very short amount of time, like I said, we've kept these relatively short. I don't have time to go into every option of the macro, but hopefully on today's session, you've got a good understanding of the functions and the tools within the PowerPack railing tools, and I hope you have found this useful. Okay, so thank you very much. I've just about kept it on time for once. I will keep the session running for a little bit. If anyone does have any questions, please type them into the Q&A box. I will highlight it now for everyone. So I'll keep the session running for a couple of minutes to answer any questions that come up. Okay, I can't see any questions coming through. If you are a UK customer, if there are any questions, obviously just drop us a line on tech support. My email was at the beginning of the presentation, so you can obviously just drop me an email as well if there is anything we can help with. So thank you very much for attending today's webinar and for attending the 3 previous ones for this summer school series. Hopefully you've all found it useful. If you do want to watch the recording again for any of them, you should get an email the following day with the link on it, or you can just use the registration link, and I will put the links tomorrow on all my social media as well. So thank you very much, and we hope to see you on webinars in the future.